Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ out of college football, where Wisconsin has agreed to hire Cincinnati's Luke Fickell as their new head coach. Our Dennis Dodd confirming Fickell as the choice with a Board of Regents meeting scheduled for 5 p.m. Eastern time this afternoon to discuss the decision. Fickell has coached the Bearcats for the past 6 seasons, leading them to the college football playoff last year. They are 9-3 this year, and Fickell is 57-18 overall in Cincy. Fickell replaces Paul Christ, who was fired midway through the season. For more on this, let's bring in Cover 3 podcast host Chip Patterson. Chip, your reaction to the news that Fickell is headed to Wisconsin.
It says that Wisconsin wants to play big boy games in a big boy league that is only getting bigger, because this Wisconsin program in the current structure has enjoyed not a fast pass to the Big Ten title game, but certainly an easier road in the Big Ten West, where you did not have to compete for that division title against Ohio State, Michigan State, and Penn State. Wisconsin and Iowa have shown up most seasons and said, okay, we should be one of the favorites in this division, and Paul Christ did a good job of getting the Badgers to the Big Ten championship multiple years over. But let's look into the future of the Big Ten, because we're going to be adding USC and UCLA. And while we don't know exactly what the division structure might look like, what is not arguable is that the Badgers' path to a Big Ten championship game, to competing for a Big Ten championship, is going to get tougher. And that's where I think that Wisconsin Athletic Director Chris McIntosh had to look at the landscape and say, while Jim Leonhard certainly had an opportunity to maybe win the job when he was named interim coach earlier in the season, he went 4-3. There were some disappointing results. They were 6-6 by the end of the year, while Luke Fickell, on the other hand, led Cincinnati to some of its winningest seasons in program history. He got the Bearcats to a place where they were the first Group of 5 team to ever make the college football playoff, and he had Cincinnati trailing only Georgia and LSU in number of NFL draft picks in the 2022 NFL draft. Luke Fickell is making Wisconsin ready for the future of the Big Ten.
Yeah, 9 draft picks, as you mentioned, the third highest of any school, 5 selections in the top 100. As you take a look at Cincinnati, led them to a 9-3 record this year, didn't make it to the AAC title game. But Chip, do you get a sense that maybe he took this program as far as he could?
The hope was that he was going to lead them to even brighter pastures, because a big part of this is that Cincinnati is on its way to the Big 12. That Cincinnati will no longer be a Group of 5 program in the near future. And the hope was that Luke Fickell, who no doubt with the work he has done made Cincinnati an attractive candidate to the Big 12, that he was going to be able to make those college football playoff appearances all the more frequent as a Big 12 member. But I think that in terms of what Luke Fickell was able to do at Cincinnati, I think that he had to understand that the move to the Big 12 was going to make it tougher to win those conference championships. And I just think that there is a big difference between the Big 10 and the Big 12. Heck, I think there's a big difference between the Big 10 and most other college conferences, both in terms of the money that you're able to pay a head coach, the money you're able to pay assistant coaches, the resources, the staffing. This is where Wisconsin hands over the war chest to Luke Fickell and says, you're great at talent development, you're great at player evaluation, you are great at program building. Come and build us a program so that we can be up there going head to head with an Ohio State and a Michigan and a Penn State on an annual basis. Because again, with USC and UCLA joining the picture, it was looking like maybe the Badgers were going to be losing their standing.
A couple of days ago, we were talking about Matt Rule joining the Big Ten West with Nebraska. Now it appears to be Luke Fickell. Chip, how big of a step up is this for him going from Cincinnati to Wisconsin?
It's a massive step up. Cincinnati is a program that has a lot of tradition, but it is not quite like where Wisconsin is, especially where Wisconsin is right now. He is also going to be able to continue to tap into some of the recruiting that he's been able to do throughout the Midwest, and he's going to be able to raise Wisconsin's recruiting profile. He raised Cincinnati's recruiting profile. He will raise Wisconsin's recruiting profile. And so I think that he is getting access to resources and opportunities at Wisconsin that he never had at Cincinnati in the American Athletic Conference, that he wasn't going to have in the Big 12. This is a unique opportunity. And Jeremy, I'll say that this is interesting because it was reported that Michigan State interviewed for him for the job in February 2020 after Mark D'Antonio abruptly retired, and he turned that job down. He said no to Michigan State, he said yes to Wisconsin. That might show you the pecking order in the Big Ten right now.
And Wisconsin last won a title in 2012. That was a part of 3 in a row in the Big Ten. So when you look at this Wisconsin team, I mean, how far away are they? We saw the recruiting rankings there, and down in the 60s. But how far away is this Wisconsin program from being able to challenge in the Big Ten West, perhaps challenge in the Big Ten overall?
Challenging in the Big Ten overall is going to take some time. Luke Fickell took over at Cincinnati. He was 4-8 in year one. He won 11 games in his second season, but it took him 2 to 3 years before they were winning those conference championships, before he had the Bearcats up in the top 10 of the final AP poll and eventually crashing the college football playoff. That's what you're signing up for. You're giving Luke Fickell the runway to maybe take a few years before you get to where you want to be. This Wisconsin program is deep on tradition, but they don't have a lot of Big Ten championships. Only 6 of them since 1970. 3 under Barry Alvarez in the 90s, 3 with Brett Bielema in the 2010s, as you mentioned right there. And I think that the absence of conference championships might give some patience with Luke Fickell to be able to really build this thing up. But with the money that he's going to be paid and with the hire that Chris McIntosh has made, the expectations are that Wisconsin, in the future of the Big Ten, can compete with the best teams in the Big Ten for conference championships.
Chip, just one last question for you. In terms of Cincinnati, where do they go from here? What does that look like now with Fickell leaving for Wisconsin?
Cincinnati is so much more attractive since before Luke Fickell came. Luke Fickell's success helped Cincinnati get that Big 12 bid, and being in the Power 5 in the expanded college football playoff makes it attractive. This is a Power 5 job as we look into the future, and I think that we should consider any number of names. I think that as an Under Armour school, that maybe we start to see Deion Sanders pop up again. I think that as a Cincinnati-based school, you will remember that Tom Herman, who had some success at Houston before he went to Texas. And he was actually born in Cincinnati, moved to California when he was 6 years old. But any number of these coaches might be a candidate for this Cincinnati job. It's a really good job that I think will have a fair share of quality options to replace Fickell with the Bearcats.
Cover 3 podcast host Chip Patterson joining us to discuss Luke Fickell, the new head coach, scheduled to be the new head coach at Wisconsin. And of course, Chip will be talking more about this, maybe an emergency pod coming up this afternoon once the news is finalized. Board of Regents, a meeting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time this afternoon. It is believed to finalize this hire. You can follow the Cover 3, download and follow the Cover 3 wherever you get your podcast on.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.